So before we get into exactly how people became slaves in Israel, I think it's important that we take a look at one main rule concerning this subject. Exodus chapter 21, verse 16. And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or he that be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. God laid out from the beginning, I do not support human trafficking. Nobody is going to be doing it. And if you are caught kidnapping a person, you will be put to death for that. One of the reasons that people ended up being slaves in Israel had to do with their war laws. So God told Israel that if you were going to go to war against a particular city or a nation, you are supposed to send some type of peaceful message to them. And if they reply back with, hey, no, get out my face, we getting ready to do this, then the Bible taught that they could go in and fight that city, and certain people or certain groups, depending on what the situation was, they were allowed to take them as bondmen or servants or slaves. The second reason that the Bible gives for why a person can end up being a slave in Israel is if they were caught taking something from somebody that they was not supposed to have and they couldn't pay for it. Or let's say I took something from you that was very expensive and I ended up getting caught in the act, or I had already sold it or got rid of the item. The Bible taught that I could then be brought into slavery or be a bondman because of it. Exodus chapter 22 verse 1 and verse 3. If a man shall steal an ox or a sheep and kill it or sell it, he should make full restitution. If he have nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. Another reason is if I owed somebody something and I could not pay back on my debt. 2 Kings chapter 4 verse 1. Now there cried a certain woman to Elisha, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead, and the creditor is come to take unto him my 2 sons to be bondmen. The fourth reason why a person could end up being in slavery in Israel was because they ended up buying you from another nation outside of Israel. Leviticus 25 verse 44. Both thy bondmen and thy bondmaids, which thou shalt have, shall be of the heathen that are round about you. Of them shall you buy bondmen and bondmaids. So it's important to note that God was like, you're not going to be buying people within the nation to become slaves. Everybody that you buy will come from the outside. And there's a reason for that. When you buy somebody scripturally, they became your property. It was in the sense like LeBron James is the property of the LA Lakers. LeBron James is not a slave, but he does have a contractual agreement about certain things. One thing that did not exist amongst the other nations when it came to their bondsmen and their slaves was the fact that you had rights. Remember, in Israel, you had to be treated fairly. God also stated you had to treat the slave like one of your family members. I mean, even in ancient Near Eastern cultures, where did anybody respect their slaves or treat them like family members? Also, slaves got time off. I think because Israel kept the Sabbath and there were other feast days and holy days, they got 52 to 60 days off a year. Also, because they were keeping a weekly Sabbath, the slaves had 1 day off a week. So I don't know if anybody can tell me where slaves had a whole holiday schedule. When you was a slave every day of the week. Think about it. Even though God granted permission for the Israelites to buy slaves of other nations, immediately when that slave got into the nation of Israel, life became instantly better. So in a sense, who wouldn't have wanted to transition from the situation they were in into the current one they would be in up under Israel? If God didn't care about how slaves were treated, why did he bring a famine for years? 2 Samuel chapter 21 verse 1. Then there was a famine in the days of David 3 years, year after year, and David inquired of the Lord. And the Lord answered, It is for Saul and for his bloody house, because he slew the Gibeonites. So if you remember that story, Israel had made a league with these guys, even though they were tricked into it. But the thing is, these guys are supposed to be bondsmen for life because of what they did. But even though they were slaves to Israel, even though they were supposed to hew wood and draw water constantly for Israel, God said you still can't mistreat these guys. You can't do them however you want to just because they are foreigners and just because they are bondmen. One of the big questions is, why didn't God just outlaw slavery? Why even allow it and then just regulate it with laws? Well, one thing that's important to realize is that there were no one Mains, there were no First Franklins, there were no financial institutions that a person could go to secure funds. So if I had no money and I was already poor, and let's say I had a wife and I had kids, the only thing that I could offer was my service and my work. So what I could do is, in exchange for goods, for a roof over my head, or for housing, I could offer myself as a slave or bondservant to you. But me doing so did not give you the right to mistreat me. But think about it. In that situation, if God would have just outlawed it, what would people have done to obtain food? Like, what kind of incentive could I give you to help me in my situation? So from my understanding, the reason why God didn't outlaw slavery and a person being a bondsman or a bondsmaid was because God was looking out for people, because he knew the way things were in those cultures, a lot of people probably would have starved to death. Because let's say I was like, yo man, I need something. I need help. I got my family. They're hungry. Let me work for you for so many. The person would have said, "No, it's illegal for us to do that." So now I'm stuck in a situation where I can't even secure like the simple things that I need. So just from that alone, I believe that God's wisdom and his intelligence and his grace is shown just when we take a look at how the Bible teaches about slavery and what it teaches about being a bondsman or a bondsmaid.